Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here. Again, thank you very, very much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. And today I am joined by creativity coach and mentor Nina Worsley, who is here to discuss her experiences with femininity in creativity. Nina works primarily with female creative entrepreneurs who are ready to break free from self-doubt, inconsistency, and the weight of expectations. Her mission being to help artists, writers, designers, musicians, and visionaries unlock their full potential by harnessing their creative energy, building unshakable confidence, and gaining complete clarity in their artistic vision. Through her coaching, Nina helps women transform their creative blocks into breakthroughs so that they can step into their power as entrepreneurs while staying true to their artistic vision. Nina believes that creativity is not just a passion, it's the secret to an incredible life and a thriving business. Nina, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely delighted to have you. Absolutely delighted. I was kind of worried a wee bit in the beginning because I was having a bit of trouble with the word femininity, but I've practiced it so many times between the last time we chatted and now that I think I nailed it, and I think I've nailed it twice
Yeah, you're doing great.
already. It's so weird. Some words, there's just a stumble between the brain and the mouth for some reason, but I'm glad that I got that one organised. So, just for the benefits of the audience, I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey that has taken you in to your creativity coaching and your mentorship and the work that you're doing with female entrepreneurs. So can you just give us a bit of a background that inspired you to getting to where you're at right now?
Yeah, so I grew up in a really musical household and community. And I have that sort of like natural talent. My dad was a pianist. Both my parents sang, and they loved hearing me sing. All my family, whenever I would go to like family gatherings, they'd always ask me, "Nina, sing a song."
Yeah.
So that was always music is always a really, really important part of my life. And when I was, still very young, but like, 10, 11, I or even before that, I would naturally gravitate towards expressing myself through like writing music. And I think my first song I ever wrote was I think when I was 7 or 8. And obviously I don't know what it sounded like as to this day, but I always like had a natural gravitation towards using music to express myself. And there are times when I would want to express myself and like sort of process something.
Yeah.
And the only way that I would feel like I could actually do it was through music. That was like my language at that point.
Yeah.
And writing so much as a young kid and having that be your sort of natural medium, you sort of learn about yourself through that process.
Yeah.
And there were points in time when it would be like I could write a song a day or something like that. And then there were periods of time when I felt like I could go 6 months without putting anything down, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what the difference was for a really long time. It would take me years to actually understand, which is why I'm here. But growing up and sort of like doing that, having that sort of repetition, it became really prevalent when I started school as a music composition major and was forced to create on a consistent basis. And if you didn't, then you were graded for it. I
Yeah.
had to confront, you know, where that inconsistency is happening because I needed it to go away. Like I just can't have it anymore. But through that process and through college, I sort of understood and sort of got to the bottom of where that came from and sort of got rid of it, which I didn't think was possible at first.
Yeah.
But for me, it was learning about myself internally and understanding that when when art is the way that you communicate with the world, then that inconsistency and those blocks are not skill issues. It's not a skill block. It's almost always an internal block or something that your brain is trying to protect you from, because our brains really want to keep us safe.
Yeah.
So when there's something that's stopping you, it's because there's something that you need to confront, that you're kind of like trying to protect yourself from subconsciously.
Yeah.
And so I went on this huge journey of understanding that, and the more that I learned it, the more I realized that I need to to help other people understand this because of how much it's changed my life.
Yeah. That's incredible. And when you said that you were, writing to help you cope, my words, not your words, through your journey, or when you were creating music, sorry, was it always writing songs, or was there composing parts of that where sometimes you would maybe write some lyrics and other times you would be actually just creating music? Was that, or was it one and the same?
It was a mix of both. When
Okay.
I was younger, I learned how to play piano by ear. I taught myself when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
So I had, like, the four-year-old brain of, like, the simplest songs you could ever create on the piano, but the piano was a big part of who I was, and I would sit for as long, like, until the sun went down and just sit at the piano and just, like, make things up. So
Yeah.
it was an equal amount to me for a long time, and
Yeah.
then, obviously, when I started composing, those, emotions and the ability to convey them became a little bit more complex, but yes, there were some times when music was showing me the words I couldn't say.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. The reason I asked that, I literally had Taylor Swift in my head at various moments through your journey, because that seems to be an element of her career for such a long time now, where she's lived her life through her music, whether, mostly in retrospect, as far as I can tell, but her opportunity to make sense of what's happening via music and via creation and art. So the main thing we were chatting about today, of course, is femininity and creativity. So tell me a bit more about what you believe the relationship between both of those things to be.
Yeah, so creativity, I think, is in and of itself feminine, if you want to believe that. You know, doesn't mean that you're less, if you're an artist, that you're less of a man. But creativity is it's reflective of our creator, because God created us, and he put a little bit of himself inside of us. That's what sets us apart from every other creation. And part of that was and our ability to create other things. God said, "Be fruitful and multiply, and have dominion over the earth." And that's something that, um, along with our intellect, is unique to us as human beings. When it comes to being a woman, our essence and our nature is inherently creative and transformative. In that, we take love and carry a baby, and the saying, she, give her a house, she'll make it a home. Those sorts of things are in our nature. And I think that the less a woman is feels connected to her creativity, the more discord will appear in her life, because that is more a part of our essence and our overall identity than it is a man. It's an element of a man, but it is a woman, I think.
Yeah. And do you see that with clients that you're working with, when there is or are certain blockages or droughts of creativity, or whatever that looks like, that they're just experiencing more hardship as a result, a direct correlating result of that?
Yeah, I think I see that in everyone that I come across. And I think that it's a broader issue where, as a society, I think we are less inclined to have really healthy creative outlets. And I think a lot of the issues that we have internally, and our ability to communicate, our ability to express ourselves in the way that we would like, are tied to the fact that we aren't really feeding our creativity and nurturing it.
Mm. And how do you suggest that people, I know this is such a blanket question, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you suggest that people feed that creativity? Is it different for different people? Are there some basic foundational tenets of that that you can say this is how you start. This is how you start to really tap back into that and move forward from there.
Yeah, I think that the ground zero first step is just practicing openness, because a lot of the times I will see somebody who does the same thing every day, and this is, say they're, playing video games or doing something like that, where they know this is the thing that will bring them joy, and even though it's not, the healthiest to do for
Yeah,
them. um and I hear a lot of people, especially with hobbies like that aren't um that will have you sedentary or something like that,
yeah,
that there's a sort of protection over that. Like, no, this makes me happy and I know that, so I'm going to keep doing it. But creativity is, in essence, it is newness. So if you have a blockage towards creativity and you want to start rebuilding that within yourself, the openness to newness is what you need to continue no matter where you go. And every single person has an opportunity to be creative in a different way. And I think there's a misconception that creativity is only in regards to like art and music and things like that. But if you are in a communicative job, then you have an opportunity to create. If you're a speaker, if you're a mathematician, if you're anything like that, like there's always an opportunity to show and to nurture your creativity. But when it comes to that ground zero, it is, in essence, it's newness. To create means to take something that didn't exist and make it exist, which
yeah.
is something that everyone can do, but not until you're open to something that that hasn't existed yet, that you are bringing forward.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just taking some notes as you were saying that there. I think I think publicly, actually, I have said I am not a creative person. I don't have, artistic roots. I don't have that level of creativity of taking something from nothing and creating something net new. And then you just said it doesn't have to be in an art form. It doesn't have to be in, any other type and style of, if I could say, stereotypical creativity. And the stereotypical part is just my perception. Of course, I'm not speaking for anyone else in this particular part. But I have a genuine, deep-rooted thirst for newness. I love novelty. I used to say when I was younger, I thrive on novelty. I was a project manager for many, many, many decades. And I think one of the key things that, and I wasn't intentional about this in the beginning, but certainly laterally, as I was looking at my career, I loved the element of change. I loved the element of newness. Each project provided both. They would provide some level of change. Something is going to be different after this project is completed. And to help and support different types and styles of people through that, by saying, I'm only just a wee bit ahead of you in this journey because I've been involved from the beginning. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you how we can navigate this together, and let me support you as much as I can through that. I think I've done myself a disservice, Nina. I think I am inherently creative with my
Hey.
with my newfound knowledge, which is great. So one of the things that's been part of the conversation here, you mentioned that in the early stages of the conversation we've been having today, was that sometimes it's flown. Your creativity has flowed. Sorry, not flown. Has flowed very, very readily, easily, almost. Again, my words, not yours. And other times there's been various blockers in play. In your experience with the work that you do with artists and female entrepreneurs, where do you see the common threads of self-doubt and creative blocks coming in for your particular clientele?
Hmm. So trying to give a an accurate like example. But I think that a lot of the time the self-doubt and those things that come in are they come about when you stop creating from the internal and start creating for the external. And
Right.
it's a really hard thing to balance because obviously when you're creating something, you're creating with the idea of the person consuming it in mind. Like
Yeah.
I write music because I want people to listen to it.
Yeah.
You create art because you want people to look at it and feel something. But sometimes that external element will overtake the the internal before its proper time,
Yeah.
and that will result in a dissonance because I write music for like to express myself in a certain way,
Mm.
and the end of that is that maybe someone who needs to hear that will hear it and feel that way. But if before I sat down to do that, I was thinking about that person and what they would want to listen to and how they would, whatever, then that would be a distraction from me providing the the element of myself that is going to transform this thing that will reach them. It's
Yeah.
a bridge between the two. And if you try to hop the bridge before you're ready, then you're going to end up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think when you're saying that, I often think about artists that have, mainstream artists that have lasted the test of time. Some of the biggest bands in the world, some of the biggest solo artists in the world, and you see essentially the songwriting is what I'm thinking about right now, completely evolving over time. And then some people getting a wee bit disappointed by that, by saying, oh, you used to be good when you were talking about, for example, being on the streets and poverty and injustice, or, whatever was going on for them at that particular phase of their life. And it's almost like the fan doesn't want the artists to grow. It's okay for the fan to grow, but when the artist grows at the same exponential level and starts to write and perform about other topics that are meaningful for them at that point in their life, they end up losing. I don't know what the word would be, credibility, fans,
Mhm.
income, revenue, as popularity as a direct result of that. And it's just, I think that's a very unfair thing to label at artists. I'm allowed to grow, I'm allowed to evolve, my tastes are allowed to change. I would just much prefer you were exactly the same as you were in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. How do you help people grow in their creativity through your work?
Yeah. I mean, you grow in your creativity by growing as a person. And an interesting thing on the opposite end of that, when you have fans who are, don't want you to grow, there's the opposite effect sometimes where that person will, you know, write about the things that their fans want to hear, even though, that's not really accurate to them anymore.
Yeah,
And then like there is this sort of breakdown of who they are because and their fans as a result because you're like, well, you're rapping about being in the streets, but you live in a mansion. So,
yeah,
there's that loss of trust a little bit. And I think that when you're worried about something like that, then again, it just becomes a huge distraction. And I think that a lot of it is just the idea of attention has to be let go
yeah,
because art is you. It's a piece of you that's put into something external that can be viewed or consumed by someone else.
yeah,
And if you're not true to that, then you're no longer creating it. Like if I am, painting something that comes from my heart, then that will be the effect of that will be different than if I say, people love when I paint flowers, so I'm going to paint flowers all the time until I die. It's just
yeah,
not going to be the same thing. And when talking to people, I think the biggest thing is to help them let go of the person who they were and the people who would keep them there.
yeah,
So losing the attachment of the fans that only like you because this is what you did,
Yeah.
and opening up yourself to the new world of people who are ready and need the new aspects of you that you are becoming.
Yeah. It must be very difficult to do, certainly for successful artists. And I know success is very, very subjective, but let's say very, very popular artists that generate a lot of income through providing the masses what they want. And they have record companies and producers and managers and a whole bunch of other admin things that they have to pay. And they say, but I want to go in this direction. And they say, you can't. We need another album that sells this amount, or we need another painting that has this amount of appeal or such. So I can definitely see the internal versus external discord happening through the realities of business. Quite frankly, I know when you and I were chatting prior to recording, it made me think of Bob Dylan and Bob Dylan being chronicled in the movie A Complete Unknown, which is a recent movie there, and the general gist was Bob Dylan is going to give you exactly what Bob Dylan feels like giving you on a given night. So there's no such thing as the Bob Dylan Greatest Hits tour or anything. If he decides tonight is poetry for these three poems that he wrote in the last 2 months or something, I don't know what his creative process is at all, of course, but and in the movie, it chronicled that where folks are saying, "Hey, we want the hits. When are you going to do the stuff that we paid the ticket to come and see?" And he's having this literal live interaction. I don't know how true or not it is, but it's certainly probably based on certainly probably it's probably based on reality. But where he's saying, that's cool. This is what you're actually getting. So sit down and listen and see if we can create some experience together. So it's one of these things that I never really gave a lot of thought about until we started chatting. That there are there are certain influences, I think, that people, the general common fan, doesn't truly appreciate about the journey and the artistic journey and the life journey and how all those marry themselves together. So I think I'm going to be a wee bit more tolerant now. Is really what I'm saying to the end of that, which is I'm sure music to everyone's ears there. They're probably thinking, oh, thank God, yeah, Gary's finally got with the program. I'm not sure that many people really care so much. But in terms of working with your clients to help them get beyond the initial blockers, to get beyond the things that are holding them back from either their creativity or their business as they're moving forwards. How do you do that? What's your process without revealing all your magic secrets, of course? But what does a typical journey look like, if there even is such a thing as a typical journey?
Yeah, so the first step is to map out, to like audit your vision and your priorities and your, what, not morals, but yeah, so like audit who you are essentially,
Yeah.
and what you want out of your art that you're creating. And a lot of times we start there because some of these blocks come from a disalignment. Similar to the fan example of like you're creating for somebody else, but this is what you really, really want.
Yeah.
And so because on the inside, this is what you really, really want, but you're denying that for this outward, whatever it may be. A lot of the blocks start there. In other circumstances, we talk about um, the last block that you had and what exactly happened during that block. Where were you? What were you thinking about? What is the point where you felt like you had no problem, and when did it stop?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times there's a deeper issue than just, external. It's a more deeper sort of block that requires a little bit more personal growth on the part of the artist. I'll give the example. There was a time, there was something that I wanted to write a song about, and I wrote the first half of the song, sat down, it came out super naturally, and it took me a year to finish it. And the
Right.
reasoning that I didn't understand at the time was because there were elements of this song that I felt were I was ready to sing. I was ready to sort of express externally. And the rest of it, I was still so deep in fear that I couldn't even say it out loud, let alone sing or put it on paper. But that was something that I had to I had to sort of work through because again, like I said before, when you have a block, it's almost never a skill block. It's almost always either a emotional block or a trust block.
Mhm.
There are points in time if you're something that's super vulnerable that you have a distrust in yourself or in the outcome that may come of it that is subconsciously stopping you from continuing. And
Yeah.
until you process that and really confront it, you're never going to get to the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so I love everything you said there because the journey is obviously going to be different for different people, and that level of growth, there's so much information, and I keep saying this to essentially anyone that will listen to me. There is so much information around you at any given point in time. You just know how and where to look for it and be open to what you're going to find when you get there. The example you provided there's a perfect example. You still needed some more exposure, life experience, introspection, what time, whatever that looked like to get you to the other side, where a year later you say, I understand now. I understand why the first part was easy and the second part was difficult, and I'm now prepared to finish this song. Assuming you did finish the song,
Yes, I did.
yeah,
And I
okay.
performed it.
Oh, excellent, wonderful, and using that, like being aware that you have access to more information than you think you do. And I love what you said about taking the client back and saying, let's think about an analogous experience that you had and let's get vivid around that. Where were you? Who were you? Who was in your circle? What was your health like? And move it and started to say, there's likely going to be a pattern. There's likely going to be a nugget of information here where you say, wait a second, that person was in my life then left and then came back, or wasn't and isn't again, or something along those lines. And what I find is that at times that's the work. It's the genuine data mining, and it's the genuine going back and saying with as much honesty and clarity as you can, this is what I can remember of what my experience was like at the time, and this is what's the same, and this is what's different. This is how I am different, and then putting all of this into this orb of some description, which is your life, and saying, I wonder if it's this. And then, almost being creative about figuring out how to be creative again and figuring that out is such a powerful. It doesn't matter the type and style or modality of coaching that you're doing, but accessing that data, knowing that it's there somewhere, and it just might not be the right time for you to figure it out, but just keep alert. Keep
Mhm.
alive, keep your eyes open and your ears open to figuring out when that will come, because eventually it will come. I assume there might be, I'm sure there are artists in the annals of history that have unfinished works in their drawers or now on their computers and such like that. But for the most part, if they have that introspection process to be able to take it forward, I do love that commonality with all types and styles of coaching. How do you help women integrate their creative passions with their entrepreneurial journey and their entrepreneurial pursuits? Is that something that you get heavily involved in?
Yeah, so I typically don't work with business owners in that sort of traditional sense. However, there are examples where you'll see, and there are entrepreneurs who talk about it in that realm better than I do.
Mm.
But in general, it's like I said before about the mathematician and the, all of that, where as an entrepreneur, you're literally creating every single day. You're creating a business.
Yeah.
You're, running a business is the sort of administrative aspect of a creative role. So all of these all of the principles still apply. It's just a little bit more to work around how to apply them to you within your business, because a business is also something where you're working with other people and you have expectations of you that are more strict in a way than
Yeah.
when you're writing music or something like that. Even though you do have people who you're beholden to if you're a professional,
Mhm.
overall, it is still a creative role. And again, it's getting out of the mode of thinking of creativity in painting, writing, and things like that, because any role where you exist has the potential of becoming a creative role.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so fascinating in terms of just that the entrepreneur is in the business of creativity because they're creating something new each and every single day. And if you make that in liking with any, I mean, almost anyone, in fact, every single person as they wake up on a given day is going to have that opportunity to create something new that day, create a relationship, create an interaction, create an experience for someone else, create an experience for yourself, create an opportunity for you or someone else. And yeah, again, I'm having these epiphanies as we're chatting about the possibilities that are out there, and potentially on a more kind of negative note, the restrictions and that we could put on ourselves to say that's not for me. People
Mhm.
like me don't do things like that. That's for other people that have been blessed with different types and styles of skill sets that I have. And while there's a wee bit of merit maybe to the latter part of what I said there, that doesn't mean that we don't have an opportunity that we can lean into on a daily basis to say I wonder even if it's a journal question in the morning before you set forth and say, what am I going to create today? What new thing am I going to learn, be, act, or do, or something like that? Or it's retrospective, in the evening, depending if you are a journaler and what time of the day that you would typically do that. But it's really certainly a very expansive way to think about that. So in terms of your music and the learnings that you have from your own life experience in your music and the learnings you've gained from working with other people in terms of their creativity as well, what does that process look like for you today that's different to what it looked like before with everything that you've garnered and gained to date?
Yeah. So the the biggest difference is how often I check in with myself
Right.
and and get really, really clear about getting to know the thing that I'm about to do and getting to know the reasoning and how it connects to me and how I want to go about it.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, you're kind of just like bobbing around. You're kind of just like not doing so much introspection as,
Yeah.
a 7-year-old. But the more that I learn that creativity doesn't happen by accident and who you are is going to put so is who you are is half the battle when
Yeah.
you're creating. Because if you're not in the right headspace, if you're not, if you're distracted or anything, that will always translate, because the thing that you're creating is an extension of you. So
Yeah.
all of those negative connotations are going to be there, whether it's in the way that's perceived or if it's in the the way that the music happens. There's sometimes when I'll be writing music when I'm tired, and it will translate in the thing that I want not being as strong as it could
Mm.
have been if I had given my all to it when I was supposed to be focusing on it.
Yeah.
So I think that the biggest thing is just making sure that I'm completely aligned with the thing that I'm doing. It's a bridge. And actually I gave this example. I don't know if I gave this to you when we were talking last or if I was talking to someone else, but there's a example that I give, and it's really I think it's really funny, where if anyone's a singer, then they'll understand this, where a lot of the times when you're learning to sing, the hardest thing is learning how to sing with your diaphragm, which is like with your gut, the deepest breath that you can have. And when you're learning to sing, you'll have people who lift their shoulders or breathing through their chest. But the reason why breathing from your diaphragm is so important, and why that is the biggest difference between how strong you can be as a singer, is because you're creating a straight line from your breath, from the depth of your breath to your mouth.
Right.
And if you are singing nasally, or if you're singing from your chest, you're creating more stops along the way, and by the
Yeah.
time that breath gets to your mouth, it's not as powerful. And so I look at creativity in every sense like that, where you have to make sure you're creating a straight line from your intention to your action. And
Mhm.
any stop that you make along the way is just going to distort it once that final product comes into existence.
Yeah, I love that. We hadn't chatted about that before, so I'm really glad that you mentioned that. The various, it's like, going on a flight between one destination and another destination and taking four stops versus the straight through flight, or one way, or direct flight, I should say. And then the distractions that can come in along the way, that are literally just that. They're distractions, that they're going to be annoyances. They're going to take you off your game. They're going to remove your concentration in some way too. So it's a brilliant example of getting to where you need to get to as quickly and appropriately as you need to get there as well. So one last thing, just before I get to my final two questions, which I like to ask everyone, is one of the things that I've really taken from today's conversation, Nina, has been the word that I have is integrity. Integrity with who you are as a person, because integrity can certainly mean, in the larger scheme of things, different things to different people and different organizations. I understand that. But having integrity in and of yourself, or within yourself, to say, this is who I am, I know who I am, I know what I want, I know what's important, here are my core values, here are my secondary or tertiary values, and figuring that out, and then layering that into what you do. And you mentioned earlier there, or almost at the beginning, where you're talking about, you went from a creative, I'll do this when the time is right, to almost like a commodity, where your professors are saying that's due by Friday, the next one's due by Monday, the next one's due by Thursday, and things like that. So you're kind of like, oh, okay, that's a new skill. But leaning into that is what you said laterally, of saying, how does this align with who I am, where I am? Because there might be times you are forced to create when you're tired, and then it's knowing that, and giving yourself that grace, and then when you go back to review that or consume it in some way in the future, giving previous Nina that grace, I guess I'll use the same word again, to say, you did the best you could with what you had at the time. I know the work that went into this. Is it your best work? That's kind of subjective. I don't appreciate it as much now as I was hoping. However, I did the best that I could with the integrity that was available to me at the time. Is that the type of process that you go through? So it's not laser beamed, everything is always rooted in perfection and you're going to get it absolutely right. It's more reality is really congruent at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing when you're talking about creation is that what you create is a reflection of you. And the
Yeah.
more honest and the more truthful and just aligned that you can be with yourself, the more that's going to reflect out to the world.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the most powerful part of being a musician, and if you're a painter, I assume it's the same thing of like, I get to show the world the way that my heart works
Yeah.
and have them experience it. And I get to know myself and allow that knowledge and allow that love that I have to translate and hopefully inspire someone else to have a similar thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really like people get really nervous and really, in their head about things. I'm like, this should be really exciting. Like
Yeah.
this is you and you and the things that are important to you that you get to share,
Yeah.
and you get to share them in the truest form that you can.
Yeah, so powerful. I love it. So, as you know, this is called the Best You podcast, and I like to take this opportunity to ask each and every guest, what regular practice do you employ that gives Nina the best opportunity to be the best version of you?
For me, that would be talking to God like he's my best friend.
Right, right. I love that. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah. So, like I said, I guess you could hint in little areas of this conversation. I do believe in God. I'm a Catholic, and sometimes it's hard. And the biggest part of me growing and becoming that creative that I could be is allowing God in and acknowledging I'm a created being created by you, and I want to look up to you and be honest with myself for your sake. And the more that I sort of allowed that conversation to be normalized in my life, the more opportunities I saw that God would inspire me and support me through the things that I'm doing, and sort of feel like a real, presence that is always there. And I get to sort of make things and make them with the idea that he's going to be proud of me, and that sort of adds to the excitement and reminds me of why it's so exciting, because I'm a created being that is a reflection of the creator.
So powerful. I love it. I absolutely love it. Before I let you go, Nina, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Composed by Nina, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Cavernous Creative.
Love it. Excellent. I'll get those up on the show notes. Nina, thank you very much. I've learned a lot. I've absolutely loved the conversation today. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you so much. And you created an amazing conversation, so I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Hello again. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode, and I do hope that you found it valuable and gained some insights. I do have an ask for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you would connect with me on my socials, and that's at LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search for my name and do whatever it is you need to do there to follow me and stay updated with all the latest content, tips, and discussions. And for any more resources that you're looking for, feel free to visit my website, garygillen.com. And while you're there, you can book a free, no obligation 30-minute coaching call directly with me through the site. Whether you're looking to enhance your performance or tackle a new challenge, I'm absolutely here to help you succeed, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks very much again, and until next time, keep pushing towards your goals and getting better each and every day, my friend.